What's that? I'm going to introduce you. Hey everybody, thanks for coming. I'm going to read, I'm going to talk a little bit about my book, but before I do that, we've got a wonderful local celebrity who's going to entertain you. He's going to sing a couple of songs. Jasmine Perez is a mature jazz singer beyond her years. She's in the middle school in Metuchen, and here she is.
Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I, and let's face it, who isn't less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed. And when someone needs a makeover, I simply have to take over. I know exactly what they need. And even your case, though it's the toughest case I've yet to face, don't worry, I'm determined to succeed. Follow my lead, and yes indeed, you will be popular. You're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper ploys when you talk to boys. little ways to flirt and flounce. I'll show you what shoes to wear, how to fix that hair, everything that really counts to be popular. I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. Know the slang you've got to know. So let's start, 'cause you've got an awfully long way to go. Don't be offended by my frank analysis. Think of it as personality dialysis. Now I've chosen to become a palimpsest or an advisor. There's nobody wiser, not when it comes to popular. I know about popular, and with an assist from me to be who you'll be, instead of dreary, who you were, well, are. There's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular. La, 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 la. We're gonna make you popular. When I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own behalf to think of celebrated heads of state or especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. It's all about popular. Not about aptitude. It's the way you're viewed, so it's very shrewd to be very, very popular, like me. Well, look at all you guys. You look beautiful. You're welcome. I know clandestiny. You're going to grin and bear in newfound popularity. La 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 la. You'll be popular, just not quite as popular as me.
Jasmine, that was great. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I'm very excited, and I'm really pleased that that so many people are here. And you know, this is a story about a teacher. I'm a teacher. I used to be a teacher, then I wasn't a teacher. Now I'm a teacher again, but I'm also a writer now too. Isn't that nice? By the way, before I get started, you see all these great paintings here? The artist is Walter, who's over here. Harold. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, Harold. Okay. Got to project to the camera. Okay. Before I actually start to read, I have a couple of things I want to rant about. And it has to do with the experience I've been through in the last, well, since the summer, when I actually published this book with a company called 99% Books, which is me. And I was thinking about a guy by the name of Brian Epstein. Some of you who are older will know who Brian Epstein was. In 1962, he walked all over London. He went to every single major record label in London with a demo tape, and they all passed on it. Finally, he got together with a very small record label, and they accepted the Beatles. But every single major record label passed on him. Now, not that I'm comparing myself to the Beatles, but look how things are different now. Now, another person who went through a tremendous amount of trial and error until she finally got her book published, a woman named Catherine Stockett. You probably know who that is. She wrote The Help, and she very famously sent out manuscripts to 60 different agents. They all come back rejected. 61st one accepted her, and the rest was history. Within in less than a year, she was on the top of the New York Times bestsellers list. I'm not as young as Brian Epstein was, or as Catherine Stockett is, and I'm also not as patient either. And I think when you get to be this age and everything's getting gray, you've earned at least the right to be an impatient, grumpy old bastard, and that's what I've become. And I have, as a result, it dawned on me that rather than keep engaging with publishers and agents who didn't really want to treat me the way I wanted to be treated, it dawned on me that I was going to publish my own book. And what's nice is that everything's different now. The people who weren't interested in the Beatles, they were the experts. They were the gatekeepers. The people who tell bands, no, you're not good enough, who tell authors you're not good enough, who tell artists they're not good enough, are filmmakers. Okay? Now it's all different. Everybody can publish themselves. Now, if you're a bad writer, then you can still publish yourself and nothing much will happen. If you're a good writer, and you can work around the gatekeepers now, and that's what I've been learning. And if you think about music, I mean, bands today, they can actually produce their own records. Of course, records is an outdated term, but they also distribute directly to their fans. There used to be like 3 or 4 middlemen in between the musician and the listener, and now it can be a direct line if they want it to be. I'm having a campaign to get rid of the term self-published, because I think it's an ugly term and it's demeaning. When Dennis Hopper made Easy Rider, they didn't call it self-filmed. They called him an independent filmmaker. And when the Coen brothers made Blood Simple, they're independent filmmaker. And so we're not self-published authors. We are independent authors. And we're standing in an independent bookstore. And God bless them, because it's all getting homogenized. And what Sergio and Karen have to do to keep this place as beautiful and unique as it is, it's a great thing. So independent artists, independent stores, independent everything is wonderful. I just want to talk about where this book came from. I was a teacher a long time ago in the 70s. This book is about a teacher. And I was a teacher myself a long time ago in the 70s at the Jersey Shore where this is set. And then I left teaching for a long time. I was in marketing in the entertainment business for a long time. And then when it was no longer necessary to kill myself, I mean, I enjoyed marketing, I enjoyed the entertainment business, but after a while, my wife Linda said to me, you can go back to teaching. You were a good teacher, go back to teaching. Sarah's already graduated from college, you can go back. And so I did that in 2005. But while I was in between teaching, during those 25 years I was doing something else, I always wondered what it would have been like had I stayed. And then I started thinking about what's it like. Some teachers stay in the same town for their whole career, right? It's not unheard of, it happens a lot. Maybe not as much as it used to. And I started thinking about a character who taught in the same school district for his whole life, and in a small city. And I thought the Jersey Shore would be a good place. And might sound corny, but I kept thinking about that Robert Frost poem about which path you choose and going back. And you always say, oh, I'll go back to the other path, but the road not taken, you very rarely get to go back to. So this is kind of a way I got to have 2 different lives at the same time. So this I felt was fertile soil to build a character, and I did. And once you build a character, you can just put the character in the. Hey, leave up. You can just put the character into the world, and the character will help you write the book. And that's really what happened. And Mr. Bachman, the main character in this book, is somebody I've been working on since the 90s. And the first thing I do is I planned out his whole life arc. I have that somewhere in the depths of my computer. His whole life arc from when he was a young man all the way till old age. And this is a series. Of course, there's only one book in this series so far, but there's another one coming next year, and that will be a prequel. This is set in 1983. That one will be set in 1979. One of the side benefits of doing this project for me was reuniting with certain people, and one of the most important is that guy right back there, Steve Leibowitz. Steve and I worked together in the marketing business in the entertainment world. Hell, how long ago, man? 20 some odd years ago. And
3 years?
yeah, when it came time for a cover, I was so concerned. I didn't want my book to look self-published. I wanted it to look really professional. And Linda said, call Lebo. And it took a while for me to figure out his number, because he doesn't answer emails and stuff. But isn't this a beautiful cover? It is beautiful. I got to tell you, when he sent me some proofs, just some sketches that he drew, and it just blew my mind. This became a real book. I mean, it's always been a real book writing-wise, but when I saw covers that really looked like covers that you'd see in a bookstore, it was amazing. So Lebo and I used to work on all sorts of ads and packaging and marketing. We could tell you stories for hours. I'm not going to do that. But it was so great getting back together with him and brainstorming and coming up with things. And I give him some sketches. Here's the first sketch of the cover of Heartless, Cruelty. It was on a placemat. And see, that is, look at that. And out of that, he said, oh, I get it, and came this. All right. So that's really good. If you can find yourself somebody like Lebo, you're really good. He likes to put typos in things too, but we won't concern ourselves with that. And then I'd just like to say there's several good writers in the room right now. One of my favorite poets is sitting right there, Claudia Handler from California. And my daughter Sarah is here. Sarah has published 3 different short stories just in the past year. So she's off to a great start in her writing career. Oh, and there's a student of mine from back in my my Heartless, Cruelty days. But I wasn't heartless or cruel, was I, man? That's pretty good.
Never.
That's pretty good. Okay.
I figured out it's 39 years ago. I had you.
39 years ago? And that's impossible because you're only like 39 now. I didn't teach any 0-year-olds. I don't know how that's possible. That doesn't make any sense. Forget it. I'm not buying that. Last little tidbits before I start reading. I did send this out to a lot of agents and publishers, and at one point, an agent who promised me that she would read the whole book got back to me, and she said, I really like it. She sent me an email. I really like it. It's so cute. And I just wanted to shoot myself because cute. I mean, this book has murder and violence and child abuse and just all kinds of horrible stuff. And I told her it wasn't cute. She wanted to give it to the young adult people in her agency. And I said, no, read past the first paragraph. Because the first, I'm sure she had just read the first page or two of chapter 1, which introduces the main character from the point of view of a kid. So, there's a teacher, there's a kid, there's a classroom, young adult. She passed it away, okay? So I decided I didn't want to ever have that happen again. So I wrote a prologue. And I said, in this prologue, I am going to introduce the most disgusting character I can and have him be so non-young adult friendly, if that's possible, and so that if anybody ever reads it again and only reads the beginning, that's what they'll see. They'll see this thing, and they might not like it, but at least they won't think it's for teens. Not that I have anything against teens, and I'm happy for some of the students I teach now. Some of them are seniors. Go buy it. Yeah, I'll take your money, and I hope you enjoy it, and they will, I think. And some of them already started reading it, but I'm not trying to sell it to them. I'm trying to sell it to a general market. So I wrote this horrible prologue, and then I realized I liked it, and it needed to be there, and it gave a certain symmetry with something that happens at the end. So I'm going to start by reading that to you. It's only a couple of pages, and it's got, for the reason I said, it's got a lot of curse words in it, okay, because it's in the voice of this particular character, okay, so you've been warned, all right? The prologue is called Father of the Year. At 10:15 a.m. on the last day of his life, Lemmy Fender awoke on his living room couch, wondering where he was. Then he remembered the little shitbox in Atlantis. He ducked the last few months' rent up in Highlands, found this place only 2 months ago, and moved in along with his kid in September. The kid. He vaguely remembered fighting with him last night. Or was it yesterday morning? Annoying pest. I kept him, taking care of him since his mother ran out on us when he was just a baby. But do I get any credit? Do I get any thanks for that? Shit, he must be what? At least 16 or 17 by now. When he was small, he was cute. Women loved him. And they thought I was a goddamn prince, Father of the Year. Him being cute was useful in other ways, too. He could do errands. But a teenager? Teenagers aren't worth shit. Either be a little kid or be a man. In between was a big fucking waste of time. Maybe the next time Lemmy ducked out, he'd leave the kid behind, too. Little fuck, he thought he probably won't even miss me, after all I'd done. Lemmy hefted himself up off the couch and stood himself up. Stuck to the jellied flesh of the back of his right upper leg were 2 quarters, a dime, and a bottle cap. Rolling Rock. He had a woman's pink fuzzy slippers on his feet. He thought they were funny. For such a large man, pushing 300 pounds, he had small, you might even say dainty feet. If a blow to the head with a tire iron some years back had not robbed him of his sense of smell, he'd have noticed that for all the empty beer bottles around him, the place smelled surprisingly good, or at least not awful. Lemmy himself needed a shower. He'd get to it. He scratched himself through his underpants, the only thing he had on beside the slippers. He rubbed his swollen eyes and then his enormous midsection. Hungry, Lemmy shambled toward the kitchen. The bottle cap fell off when his flesh puckered, but not the coins. The light in the refrigerator made him squint. Inside, on a paper towel, was a half a sandwich. He wasn't sure what kind of meat it was, but it had mustard and mayonnaise and ketchup on it, which was just how he liked it. He stuffed it into his mouth. Back in the living room, with the last remaining beer from the fridge, Lemmy dropped with a house-shaking thud back into the sagging couch. He reached between the cushions and pulled out the remote control, with which he brought the TV set to life. Scanning up through the channels, he stopped at 11. Tom and Jerry had started. Lemmy got a kick out of the way those 2 fuckers beat the shit out of each other. It made him laugh out loud. He was only marginally aware that they were meant to be a cat and a mouse. The cat didn't really look like a cat, and the mouse was too big to be a mouse, and he didn't know which one was Tom and which Jerry. He just knew that they were always together, and they always beat the shit out of each other. It was funny. A commercial for gum came on, and then it went away. The TV was dark. In fact, everything had become dark and quiet, too. Lemmy put his hand to his head and then his chest. A lot of people had told him over the years that he would have a stroke if he didn't lose some weight and get some exercise. Had he just been struck, blind and deaf? He left the light on in the kitchen, but he could see that it wasn't on anymore. The fuse box was behind a framed picture of a sailboat on the wall by the bathroom. He got up again and walked the 3 steps. Moving the picture, he put his big hand over all 8 of the fuses, feeling to see if one had burnt. Nothing. Very little illumination leaked into the house from the late October sun. Now, Lemmy knew he hadn't paid the electric bill lately, but he believed in his heart of hearts that Jersey Central Power and Light was required by law to let a customer slide for 3 months before turning off the juice. He hadn't even lived there for 3 months yet. What the fuck? There was nothing to do but to return to the couch. The remote was still there, and he clicked it in the general direction of the vacant space where Tom and Jerry had been cavorting. Nothing happened. He threw the remote at the TV screen. In a few hours, Lemmy would be dead. In the meantime, he lay back again on the couch. He put both his hands between his legs and rolled on his side, his face against the corduroy upholstery on the back of the couch. He slept. I would also like to read to you a section of the last chapter in part one. The book has 3 parts, and this is the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 pages in part one. And we're with Mr. Goffman now, that's the name of the teacher, and he is in his classroom teaching a lesson to his students, and he's looking out the window of his classroom over the parking lot of the school. And this is in Atlantis, New Jersey, which, if you've ever been to Long Branch, New Jersey, very similar. Remarkable similarity. Anyhow, for some reason, or for reasons that we won't go into now, this is only a couple of years after John Lennon was assassinated, and that thought had just gone through his mind, and he was feeling a little gloomy about it. And with this melancholy thought in mind, he gazed over the top of the paper, between the slats of the Venetian blinds, and out across the school parking lot, which spread out below his second-story window. Since the friendly note, he had gotten a warning note from some bad guys in his car. Since the friendly note had been left inside his trunk, he'd gotten into the habit of checking the car from time to time with a glance from up here. The day was all bluster and bite, with winter now scouting new turf, staking its claim in no uncertain terms. The special bite of salt in your windblown seaside late autumns made the air sharper and the need for scarf and gloves come earlier than it did elsewhere. Huge piles of brown and yellow leaves laid in drifts in the parking lot's corners, particularly on the side that bordered the woods along Benson Creek, where cigarettes and pot were smoked by students when the leaves were green and provided cover from disapproving eyes. This blousy morning animated the leaves from their drifts, swirling them around the filled parking lot like its own weather system. The leaf storm obscured details, making everything look like it was in motion. Bachman's yellow VW was in the most distant file of parked cars, probably an eighth of a mile from the window. Far as it was, and screened as it was by the dancing debris racing through the air, he couldn't tell if, as he'd suspected, he'd have to scrape frost off his windshield in the afternoon, as he'd had to do that morning. No sun broke the clouds to prevent the moisture and temperature from glazing the cars with ice. He peered out, but he couldn't see it well enough. He called one of his students over. The eager boy was up out of his seat beside his teacher at the window. "This is good, nice job," he was reading the student's paper. The tall blonde boy was beamish. Without turning from the window, Goffman changed the subject. "Would you do me a favor? Go to Miss Tonnery's room and ask to borrow her binoculars." It didn't take 60 seconds for the student to return from the science teacher's classroom next door and press the pair of binoculars she kept for her bird-watching club into Mr. Goffman's hand. Everyone else in the room was busy, except for 2 girls in the back who, pleased with themselves, were wisping, sharing some of their made-up words with suggestive illicit glee. Goffman focused the binoculars. It took a moment to find the car now through them. Something had caught his eye, some movement, and it seemed to have nothing to do with the chaos of the leaves. Finally, he located the dull yellow of his car and, with his closer image, shaky though it was at this distance, and buffeted though it was by the blowing stuff, he saw it. It was something that didn't belong. Something was on the rust-pocked hood of his car, laying across it. Some blown garbage, a branch of a tree, maybe? Bachman's stomach made a lurching movement, and he thought for a moment that he might throw up, though in fact he hadn't eaten anything so far today. The binoculars couldn't get him close enough. "I'll be right back," he said to the class. They looked at him with wide-eyed surprise. This was unprecedented. Where was he going? "Stay here. Please, just look. Don't leave the room. Finish your poems. I'll be back in a second. Just sit tight. It's nothing. I'll be right back." With that, forcing himself to appear casual, he stepped out of the room. When he got to the stairwell at the near end of the corridor, he took the stairs 3 at a time until he got to the bottom and, smacking the crash bar with both hands thrust forward, burst through the double doors. It was cold, but he didn't feel the cold. Not the cold of the air, anyhow. He fast walked, then jogged. Then, as he got closer to his car, he ran. He was confident that his class would at least obey insofar as not leaving the room, but he knew that by now they were, to a kid, glued to the windows, observing his dash through the faculty parking lot. Despite this, he didn't slow, and the closer he got, the more specific his fear, his dread, and his certainty at what he was going to find. there's a main character in the book who's been missing, a teenage boy. Then Bachman was there. Jason Fender lay motionless across the hood of Mr. Bachman's car. His feet were on the pavement, his shins were up against the front bumper, and the rest of him lay still on the hood, arms akimbo. Each of his ungloved fingers, Bachman immediately noticed, was curled. His hatless head was matted. A twist of long, greasy hair, leaves, and sand. His face was turned to the left, away from Bachman. Bachman stepped carefully to the boy. He touched him lightly on the back, hoping to reach up to his neck to feel his carotid artery, to reassure himself that Jason was merely sleeping, but that light, almost negligible touch somehow dislodged the still form from the round VW's surface. Before Bachman could react, Jason slid to the cold cement at his feet. Bachman's jaw fell open as the boy fell sideways. Recovering, he fairly leapt on the boy, now lying on his back, eyes closed, mouth open, fingers still curved into 10 purple claws. It was not a shade of purple he'd seen on fingers before. The thin, black, unlined raincoat was open, and Bachman laid his own face on the boy's chest. With his ear, he listened, and he felt. Bachman's eyes closed, and then they opened, and in them was a thing like hope. A thing with feathers, he thought. Since the intrusive day of the punctured tire and the warning note, Bachman had begun locking his car each day in the lot, something he'd formerly done only sporadically. Now he cursed the locked vehicle because the keys were back in the classroom, in his coat pocket on the coat tree. Bachman got to his knees, swiveling his head back and forth. Not a soul was moving anywhere in sight. He did some rapid calculations, and then he acted. Scooping his right arm under Jason's knees and his left under his shoulder blades, Bachman stood. He was appalled by how easy this was to do. The boy felt nearly weightless. His head hung limply, mouth gaping, Adam's apple pointing at the clouds. Bachman took a deep breath, and he began to run with his burden back toward the double doors. This vision, teacher racing toward school with unconscious person in his arms, had the expected catalytic effect on his students. As if they were a flock of birds, they turned in unison from the windows where they'd been watching, but had been unable to see what was going on until Mr. Bachman had risen with Jason from the far side of the car. As one voice, they began shouting, and as one body, they darted, faster than Bachman had, out of the room, down the stairs, and out the doors toward the rapidly approaching teacher. Through their shouting, they couldn't hear what he was shouting. As they neared him, they flocked around him, quickly realizing who it was he had in his arms, but in the chaos, they failed to recognize that Mr. Bachman was still shouting. He was shouting one word, repeating it, but they didn't hear it. How could they? No one had ever seen anything like this before in school. Their minds were effectively blown. Bachman kept moving through them, toward and then through the doors. By this time, several teachers and a security guard were there, and Hector, the security guard, heeded Bachman's cry. Ambulance, ambulance, ambulance. Bachman kicked open the door to a first-floor classroom that was not in use. He turned in the doorway, still carrying Jason, and he picked Ellie Nelson out of the rapidly growing crowd. Please get my kids back up to my room. This snapped the other teachers out of their torpor, and they turned and did their best to restore order. Bachman turned back to the empty classroom. He walked to the teacher's desk at the front of the room. With a wordless look, he compelled his pal, Bobby Davidson, who'd just walked out of the faculty men's room and happened upon this unusual form of chaos, to sweep the desk clear with one motion of his arm. Bachman laid the boy on the cleared surface of the desk and collapsed into the empty teacher's chair. Mr. Davidson put his hand on Jason's neck, held it there for a moment. As Bachman watched, Bobby took off his brown corduroy sports jacket and wrapped the boy's torso with it. Hector dashed into the room and with quick gestures conveyed that an ambulance was on its way. With that, Bachman drew an enormous breath, as though he hadn't inhaled for the duration of his cross-parking lot run. Ellie Nelson had apparently gotten someone to cover Bachman's class upstairs because she came in now carrying his coat. Behind her rushed 3 paramedics. 2 of them were all over Jason, checking his pulse, blood pressure, airways, pulling his eyelids open and covering him with an insulating blanket. The 3rd paramedic shone a light in Bachman's eyes. Bachman weakly waved him off and donned his coat. In less than a minute, he was jogging alongside a gurney, climbing awkwardly into the back of the ambulance with a still, shallow-breathing boy who was, even then, still being sought up and down the East Coast of the United States. Thank you. That's what I planned on reading. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask me or say or do? Or
When's the movie coming out?
Don't even laugh. Don't even laugh. Can't make any promises because I know you don't like to read, Levi. I know you don't like to read.
He's gonna read this though, isn't he?
Yeah. I think it's sort of cinematic. So. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for coming. If you would like to buy one of these lovely books, I would be happy to autograph it for you. If that's something you want. If you don't want me to mess up your book, I won't. Thanks again to Sergio and Karen for hosting this tonight, and to Jazzy for doing her thing before. And thank you for coming. Okay. Of me by this? Yeah. I never took a single picture with my iPad.